Okay, welcome to Discovering Buddhism, part 6 of 6 on how to meditate. And this is our last session for this module. And we've covered quite a lot already in this module. I hope you've appreciated, the journey we've taken together for these last 6 weeks. And we're going to just wrap up today with some practical elements about establishing a daily practice, which is actually a whole module, but we'll just look at some of the little points to bring out from that module. And to do a little recap, I also want to show you today some of the video FPMT did a long time ago now. Some great videos that go with discovering Buddhism. So I'd like to just share a little bit of that because it's about 25 minutes. That'll be a session gone if I show you the whole thing, but we'll just do a little clip of that, which is Venerable Rene Fusey talking about the mind and calm abiding, etc. So I thought that'll come in very nicely with our topics today. And our meditation practice for this week will be equanimity, which we did a little bit in the Lam Rim meditations in the morning, one session last week. So we'll cover that again today, especially because Maggie kept mentioning it. So I thought maybe it was important. So I put that in. Thanks, Maggie. Let's start as usual, though, by setting a good motivation. And we're going to use, as usual, these two verses, Refuge and Bodhicitta verse, and then the verse from the Vinaya. So we should know by now what the purpose of our motivation is. We covered this as one of the weeks of Mind and Its Potential, and in this module, actually, we covered it both. Why it's important for our practice to become causes for liberation, for samsara and full enlightenment, that we actually decide to do the action for that reason. So we're thinking about middle or great scope motivation, and if you might as well get to grips with the great scope motivation right from the beginning, and then you're still doing all the practices of the small and middle beings along the way anyway, but with the bigger motivation, which is to liberate all living beings from suffering by becoming enlightened ourselves. But it has to start from where we are, understanding our own suffering. So these first two lines are about that, understanding exactly the nature of our unenlightened existence. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama once put it, this pervasive compounded suffering, this third level of suffering, and the Buddha taught in the first, the Four Noble Truths, pervasive compounding suffering. The very fact that we have this body and mind polluted by karma and afflictions, it kind of perpetuates a cycle of rebirths without any control. So we want complete freedom from that. And all of the sufferings that go on top of that, suffering of change and suffering of suffering. And once we've deeply understood all that, birth, aging, sickness, death, etc., then we'll understand how all of the living beings are experiencing the same. Some of them much, much worse pain and gross sufferings. And some of them in blissful states, which is going to soon end, and they haven't created any more positive karma, so they're going to end up back at the beginning, as it were. So in those two extremes, nobody is creating any particular positive karma for different reasons. So even the upper realms are not suitable in the long term for happiness, real happiness. And how wonderful it would be, if we had all the methods, all the skills, we could see past and future lives, we could see the propensities of living beings, exactly what is needed at what time. We'd never have to guess. You'd know exactly what to do to help. And that'd be awesome, absolutely stunning. Something along those lines for refuge and bodhicitta, just bring those to mind as we recite this verse 3 times together. Sangye Cherang Soki Chornam La Janchu Padu Dadni Kapsuji Dagi Chenyangi Pasanam Gi Jala Penjia Sangye Japara Shor Sangye Cherang Soki Chornam La Janchu Padu Dadni Kapsuji Dagi Chenyangi Pasanangi Jala Penjia Sangye Japara Shor Sangye Chirang Suki Charnam La Jancho Badu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Chenyangi Pasanangi Jala Penjia Sangye Japara Shor. The next verse in English. He who caring with compassion taught the holy Dharma so that all wrong views would be abandoned. Gautama, homage to him. Okay. So here we are in the last week, and I know it's been a couple of weeks since our last session, but does anyone remember some of the kind of definitions or ways of describing what meditation is according to the Tibetan Buddhist tradition? I'm restraining from saying definition exactly because maybe it's not quite described in that such a strict way. But
becoming familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Good. Tibetan word is what for that?
That's a good question. it begins with a T. It begins with a T, I think.
Gom.
Oh,
Gom.
yes, sorry.
The G. Gom.
And a Gomdi is a place to become familiar with, isn't it? Gompa, sorry. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, there's another nice description in the Lamrim Chima about kind of bringing, your mind is here and the object of meditation here, and you're bringing them together. You kind of, sticking your mind to something. And there's a nice analogy using these two tools. I won't mention the names because you're going to tell me, but the analogy was used like an elephant. You're tying the elephant with a rope to this kind of post so it doesn't wander off, and then you're using something else to beat it when it doesn't do what you want. We can't really get away with that kind of thing now, but things were different then, of course. What were those two minds that analogy is helping us understand?
Mindfulness and introspection.
Good. I keep mentioning those every module because it's always important, those two, mindfulness and introspection. And mindfulness here is different from the mindfulness movement, remember? Here we're using the Buddhist terms of Buddhist use of those terms. Yeah. Sometimes you hear about conscientiousness as well. That's another the kind of mindfulness, introspection, conscientiousness. Those three. Conscientiousness is about you've taken some vows or some promises, and then you're kind of respecting those, and you're careful to keep those commitments in mind. And that comes up in Shantideva, the first 3 chapters of Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, which is part of the basic program coming up next year if you're interested in that. So you cover those wonderful verses from Master Shantideva in that text. 2 types of meditation then, Adita. What's all that about?
Analytical and stabilizing meditation.
Good. And what's an example of each?
Well, stabilizing, so you can meditate on breath or the image of the Buddha just to calm the mind, and analytical maybe on wisdom or emptiness.
Well, wisdom, realizing emptiness is actually a wisdom realizing emptiness. That's the best way to say it, because there's a wisdom mind, right? The wisdom, there's lots of different wisdoms. So there's a wisdom realizing impermanence, there's a wisdom realizing vulnerable truths, there's a wisdom realizing emptiness, there's a wisdom realizing compassion, you could say maybe. So, well, I'm not sure about the wisdom realizing compassion. Maybe that's not a good example. Yeah. Very nice. Week 4, we looked at using meditation to deal with disturbing emotions. So let's say, for example, if I was an angry person, I am an angry person from time to time. We all have anger comes up. Some of us, it's more of an issue than others, right? So what meditation would I use if I was getting angry a lot of the time at little insignificant things that, would appear insignificant to some, but what meditation would I maybe use for helping that?
Meditate on patience and loving kindness.
Good, yeah. That's another excellent chapter in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Shantideva, the patience chapter. I always kept calling it when I was studying it, the anger chapter. By mistake, I hasten to add. So patience, patience is what you do before you get angry. And patience isn't just, gritting your teeth and waiting until it passes. It has, is more of an aspect of voluntarily taking on some of these sufferings, take on small sufferings first and become courageous or resilient. There's a much better word than patience, I think. But it's usually described as patience. And but the direct opposite from anger is love, the wish to harm, the wish to help, the wish to benefit, the wish to hurt. So those kind of contradict each other. They can't be in the mind at the same time. But before you get to that stage, you want patience or resilience, courage to deal with the issues. Very nice. What about John? What about an antidote? Oh, Selena, I've only got so many people on my screen here. Selena, were you here last week, the week before last, when we did this week?
I don't think I was, no, but I can hazard a guess if you want to ask me.
That's what I like, dear, a bit of spirit. All right, and so what about jealousy? I'm full of jealousy. I can't bear anybody else to be happy. It drives me nuts, especially if they've got more things than me. What meditation am I going to use to help counteract that?
Not off the
You
top of my head. I actually knew the patience one. I actually knew the first one. Damn it.
Well, that's the most important one. Yeah. Anybody help Selena?
Rejoicing.
John? Oh, rejoicing. Rejoicing in what?
The good qualities of others.
Right. Yeah, you have to be specific there, because you could rejoice in your own qualities and then maybe jealousy just gets better.
We had this conversation 2 weeks ago.
Did we? Okay, good. I thought a bit deja vu there. Nice. Okay, back to Selena then. You don't get off that easily. What about visualization and mantra recitation? Can you give an example of how that might be used in meditation? Week 5.
I suppose if you're doing a mantra recitation, or if you're practicing a particular sadhana, there would be a visualization aspect to it.
Example?
And I suppose if you're taking refuge, you might visualize the refuge field in front of you while you're doing meditations or meditation.
Yeah, very nice example. Yeah, you can be very creative with visualization in Tibetan Buddhism meditation. It comes up all over the place. Yeah, very nice. All right then, on to this week. Setting up a daily practice then. Let's look at some topics here. So the very first, here we're going to look at some of these things are like general, and some of them are quite specific to a meditation session itself. And here in the texts, not just me making this up, but they do say clean and tidy your room before you begin. Yeah. Who would have thought it? Now you have to do some cleaning. And it's really good for the mind, cleanliness is next to godliness and all that. So that process of just preparing the space that you're about to meditate in is really helpful for the mind. So if you're a messy person like me, then you're going to find this difficult. You just have to see. And if you've got kids or pets, then you do your best, right? So I'm just going to Maggie, can you maybe mute yourself, because she's gone. I'm getting some feedback from you, Maggie. Thank you. So clean and tidy the room is important. Now, it depends where you're doing your practice, of course. Everyone has different spaces where they're going to be doing some meditation in. I'm assuming, you want to set up a practice, but if not, then don't worry. But if you've got a practice already or you're thinking about it, you try and make a dedicated space. Depends obviously on your circumstances. Maybe it's not possible. So we haven't all got the opportunity to have a shed in the garden like some people. It's beautiful, this place that Maggie meditates in every week. Set up a focus point. So, traditionally they would say an altar, of course, but here we just want an area where, you lay out some inspiring holy objects. Now, we'll look at this more when we look at module on establishing a daily practice, but the Buddha statue should always go in the middle as a mark of respect for the founder of this tradition that we find ourselves in the last moments of, And then that's representing the Buddha's body. The Buddha's speech is represented by the texts, which you put on the left as you're looking at it. And the Buddha's mind is represented on the right as you're looking at the statue, represented by a stupa. Could be pictures or postcards if you haven't got the actual objects, but that's kind of three important things. And then, you want to, what I've missed here is offerings. You're not just making it beautiful, clear, inspiring, but you want to make beautiful offerings that are clean, beautiful, inspired. Water bowls traditionally, but it could be just things like incense. Traditionally in India, for example, they would, often as a way of devotion, they would make a really nice cup of tea and put it high in front of a statue, something like that. Then thinking about where you've sat down, of course, then thinking about more about preparing the mind, prepare the room, so then preparing the mind a little bit. Use something like the 7-limb prayer. Do you all the 7-limb prayer? It's found at the beginning of anybody's texts. It kind of covers these 7 points: prostrations, making offerings, confession, rejoicing, question that the Buddhas remain, question the Buddhas teach, and then dedication. That's quite a common practice to accumulate and purify at the beginning of practices. Shall I mention those again? Prostrations, offerings, confession in negativities, rejoicing in virtues, request that the Buddhas remain, requesting that they teach. That's 5 and 6. And then dedication, number 7. Here's some more practical elements. Decide what time of day works best for you. Sometimes people like to meditate in the morning. That's the most popular one. Before the day starts, get a little bit up early, a little earlier, so you're not kind of rushing into the day and a bit behind, like me. Or maybe some people find it easier in the evening. I'm hopeless in the evenings because I tend to fall asleep by then. So if it's morning or nothing for me really. But you have to see what your metabolism and your schedule and lifestyle is like, etc. Now, here's important advice: short sessions, but regular sessions. That's the way to train with anything, to be fair. But especially for something we want to really take care of. If you kind of plow in with massive sessions of an hour, 2 hours, but only do it once a month, very little benefit. If we just do sessions for 5 or 10 minutes, but do them every day, or 5 out of 7 days a week or something, then we're much more likely to make progress. Yeah. And something Tsongkhapa is very clear about is that you have to leave feeling, that it's gone really well, or, feeling like, you could do more. It's better to leave wanting more, as it were. Yeah. Rather than slogging away thinking, oh, I had a great 10 minutes. I'm just going to continue for another 10 minutes because that was so great. And then you can, oh, well, the next 10 minutes wasn't so great, but let me just keep going because that first 10 minutes was so great. And then you do half an hour. Oh, I can't find it. So you grasp. I need that first 10 minutes feeling again. So another 40 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour. And then you just kind of, it's become really sticky and needy and tight. So it's better just to have left 10 minutes is good, or 5 minutes is perfect, and then leave. Don't plow on, leave feeling light and like successful with it. Does that make sense? It's basic psychology, that one. Here's some more little things to think about. Conducive conditions. So these are things that are going to support us in our practice. So if we're constantly craving things like sugar, caffeine, or we're not getting enough exercise, and as soon as we sit down, we're kind of falling asleep, then that's going to really affect how we meditate, right? So, there's no reason why we shouldn't be practical in looking after our bodies, because the body and the mind work very closely together. You can't separate them. What affects the body affects the mind, and vice versa. So if our body is working in its optimum level, then meditation is going to be much easier. Yeah. Thinking about the temperature of the room. Too hot means we're going to fall asleep. Too cold means we probably won't be able to concentrate. It's better to meditate in the cold, actually. So we're quite fortunate here in the UK. If we're in a hot country, like Brazil, for example, might seem all very nice there by the beach and in these hot countries, but I don't know. Is that so good for meditation? I have to investigate that one. I have a feeling I'll be quite sluggish most of the time. Just want to sit on the beach. But if it's cold and rainy and dark, you might as well just, meditate. So I wonder if that's why these traditions like Buddhism do so well in the Himalayan regions, for example. Who knows? Here's a modern one for us. Turn off distractions like phones and tablets. Makes sense, right? Like some people always used to say to me, what can we do like a timer on the phone, like a meditation timer? I've got this app that'll play a sound every and then it'll tell me how many other people are meditating and what other people are meditating on. I'm thinking, just turn the phone off. You're going to get distracted. You're going to get notifications, this, that, and the other. Turn it off. You don't need it. You can do your own timer. You can think about what is roughly 5 or 10 minutes. That would be my advice. You don't need an app. Try and get away from the phone. Put it in the next room. Turn it off. You probably know all these things already. Just making some points here. We've mentioned this already, but it's important that we know about setting motivation. At the beginning, you have to make sure that your practices become a Dharma practice by creating a positive mind that's going to flavor our meditation. Here are some suggested elements to that. The refuge and bodhicitta lines now quite well, so we're always going to be using those in Buddhist practices. Or if you want something more secular, don't want so much religious language, you could always use those kind of words like, may I just be the most beneficial person I can possibly be for others, if that means something more to you, if you don't want to go as far as future lives and enlightenment, you decide, right? And then the other side of that is the dedication. Use some prayers that you find inspiring, and always try and include emptiness and bodhicitta. And emptiness to seal the merit, so it doesn't get lost by wrong views and anger, because just anger can destroy positive karma. But emptiness is going to help seal that, so it doesn't get lost. So it's important. That's why dedication is important. And bodhicitta, so we can get the most possible benefit out of the positive karma that we created. Yeah. So with that motivation and dedication there, you can see it's number 1 and number 3 here. They're like the bookends, the kind of beginning and the end of a practice. But the actual meditation itself can also have 3 parts. This is what Tibetan Buddhism is famous for, divisions and lists. But they're really helpful actually in the end, because it really helps us focus on where we are in the bigger picture. So the actual meditation itself can have 3 parts. This is something I learned from Geshe Tashi in Germany and London. Prepare the body and the posture. You can spend even 3 or 4 months just doing that in your meditation session. That's perfectly okay. To figure out what's the best body position to be in. Just spend some time relaxing, finding your space. Then choosing your object. For example, the breath, or compassion, or the sufferings of samsara, even the sufferings of temporary happinesses, because they're insignificant, they're unreliable and don't sustain us. Like junk food, just came to mind actually. Sufferings of samsara, like the pleasures of samsara, like junk food, seem great, but then just leave you a bit ill, a bit weak. And then the third part is to focus on whatever object you've chosen using mindfulness and introspection. So it might seem like 2 isn't needed there, but 2 is really important. For me, it's really important because it means that when I get distracted, I've made it clear what I'm meditating on, and it's easier to pull it back. I'm just That's my experience there. Geshe never said that, but that's just what I've worked out for me works. Now, it could be that this actual point of meditation number 2 there, you do 2 meditations. You could do a calming the breath meditation to stabilize the mind, and then go into an analytical meditation. So then you'd have motivation number 1, then you'd have list 2 with 1, 2, and 3. Then you do another list of 2, 1, 2, and 3, and then 3. Good to see what I did there. Yeah. So let's have a listen to this monk here called Venerable Rene Fusi. Has anyone ever heard of Venerable Rene? I think he's Swiss, right, if I remember rightly. Yeah. Edita, you're nodding, you must know him, right? So I'm mentioning him because, you know, there was this famous, he's kind of famous in FPMT circles anyway, because he would never say it himself, but one of the teachers, I think it might have been Lama Zopa, kind of let it go that he'd reached some levels of calm abiding himself. You know, as a Westerner, that's great. It's news for us, of course. Not just these holy Tibetans or Asian-looking people in the mountains. Actually, Westerners can also get these stages, which is really important for us to realize. And here, this is an individual who'd done it, you know, so that's quite inspiring. So to hear advice from someone who's had experience speaking in our own tongue, as it were, is really inspiring. So if I just click this, hopefully the video should play. Let's see. Oh, it hasn't got the right place, so just for a moment. I'll just go back a bit so you can see a bit about Venerable Rene.
To have a mind where you can control your thought and your emotion is incredible. You know? Without speaking about getting spiritual realization, just to be able to say stop to the thought when you want, to say stop to the emotion when you want, you know, to have that capacity to be master of your own mind, you know, to be able to say, oh, these thoughts stop, you know, these emotions stop, now I have enough of you. And to be, whenever you want, you can stay still, you know. So to have this capacity is an incredible, you know, peace of mind, an incredible advantage. You know, suddenly you become master of your own mind. If you want to develop any qualities of mind, you need some mindfulness, some continuity in what meditation you do. You know, for example, you meditate on love. If your mind of meditating on love get constantly interrupted by other thoughts, you know, there's no way that you will have the ability to develop a strong love. You know? Same thing if you meditate about the nature of reality, you know, how things really exist. You know, if you have this inquiring mind which follows a stream of thought and wants to reach a conclusion and stay on it, you have to have had a concentrated mind which is able to follow the analysis without being distracted. And once you reach a conclusion, to look at it and see what it implies. You know, you must be able to stay on the conclusion of your analysis and see what it implies, how it changed your whole worldview, you know, based on that conclusion you have reached. So in order for that to function, again, you need to have a calm mind. If you have more, we have control over our mind, you know. What happens is that instead of going constantly up and down like a yo-yo, you know, being overly excited when something good happens and completely depressed when things go wrong, you know, our usual mind, you know. So with concentration, your mind becomes much more even. That evenness of mind actually is a type of joy, a type of peace, which is so pleasant, much more pleasant actually than even the excitement of pleasure. You know, to have this still inside, you know, is much more pleasant than having good news and good things happening out there. With time, we see that what we call pleasure, excitement, actually is a form of suffering. You know, it's not real happiness, it's excitement, and it's like boiling water. You know, there's no peace, no serenity in what we call pleasure. You know? But this we see by practicing. So that's why I think effort put into concentration, into developing calm abiding, I think is very important. And we can do that in everyday life. It doesn't need necessarily to go into retreat to do that. You know, you just know how to go about it, and you have to know how to integrate it into your everyday life. In order to develop calm abiding, there are certain conditions, you know, which help. So all these conditions we can gather in our everyday life. You know, we don't need necessarily to go to a complete isolated place. It just means having little desire, be content with one's life situation, you know, and have a little bit of peaceful environment. You know. So even though one might have a family life, still we can wake up an earlier before everybody else and do some calm abiding then, you know, or at the evening when everybody's at bed, or when the children are at school or something like that. One can find a place, a time in a day, you know, if one wants it, for a peaceful meditation. So the first is to have, you see, wishing to do the meditation, you know, by seeing its advantage, then developing the determination, I'm going to do it, and for such amount of time, I'm not going to lose the object, you know, and then is to develop the mindfulness of holding the object without losing it. And once you're able to do that, then you use introspection to check the quality of your concentration. And then to make it more precise, you know, if you're prone to dullness, then you hold the object more intensely. If you have too much excitement, you lose, you know, you relax it to be the grip on your object, you know, and like that, slowly you find the middle way, you know, and you're able to hold on to it. So that's a little bit the process, how one goes about it. And by doing that, you know, one goes through 9 stages. Just in brief, I will go a little bit over.
And we're not going to look at all those 9 stages there, because that's kind of out of our remit here in DB. But if you're interested, I can share the link with you for that video. I'll put it in the Slack channel. Is everyone on our Slack channel here for the Buddhist stuff? Sorry, I'll put it in the Buddhist channel later on tonight so you can see that. Yeah, any questions about what Venerable Rene is talking there? We're going to go to our discussion points shortly, but I wondered if anything's come up for you regarding those points there. Some of that we've already covered. Maybe some of that is new. Any questions? I can maybe try and help.
It's not so much a question as more of a point for me, that I like the way that it's that it says you can, in essence, just in its simplest form, change your mind. You know, if you're in control of your mind, I can't remember who said it as well, but basically, if something comes up, you don't basically have to be, you know, you're in control of your mind. So if you have a certain thought or you feel a certain way, in its simplistic form, you can just change it. I know it's it's a lot easier said than done, but I just like that, you know, it's your mind, it's your life. So if you're disturbed or unhappy in a certain way, just change it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Well, it's
yeah.
as I say, yeah, it's not as simple as that, but
No.
it just sounds, for me, it's just inspirational that
I mean, it
You know,
sounds
when it,
difficult from our point of view because we're not really there with that level of control. But
yeah,
what happens if you get better at meditation and focusing is that that muscle, if you like, that mental muscle of holding the object
yeah.
and moving the mind where you want to becomes stronger, and then you take back control.
I think it's nice in the fact that it's inspirational in the fact that it's quite basic. It's not something that you think flipping at that's. I know it is difficult, and you're quite right, Kerry. It takes years and years and years of practice, but in essence, it still boils down to a simple fact that we're in control. So it's up to us how you want to live your life and, you know, how you want your mind to be. So, you know, it doesn't have to be that way. And with practice, it's obviously it works. But I just think it's a great motivation that it's not complex. It's quite basic.
Can I just add? I'm reminded of the monk who from Nalanda, who did the translation for the Lam Rim teaching, and he said that, I don't know whether it's the monk, the teacher who did the Lam Rim, or the monk who was interpreting, who said that the reason why they are in a monastery is because that provides the environment that's conducive to be able to do each of these things. And I know there's something about developing a strong muscle and so on, but there's, you know, I can walk out of this shed and be presented with a neighbour who's, you know, shouting at the kids, or the dog runs up to me, or my husband shouting for something like he's forgotten something, or etc., etc., etc. And I'm just thinking that, you know, to give you that muscle the best chance, like an athlete, you need to feed it, you need to enable it to be in a place where it's going to get off the starting blocks. And I think it makes it difficult. And I think in age makes it difficult. If you've not started to develop this muscle strength, then the older you are, the more harder it is to get to it, really. So yeah, I think it's not straight. I think what we're trying to do is, the end result is straightforward, but I don't think the process is in the West at all, I have to say.
No, I totally agree, Maggie. It's, as I say, it sounds easy, but it's far from easy. But you know, it takes years of practice. But and again, I think you're right. It's like any of these things. I think the practice for me is actually off the cushion. You know, if you meditate in a nice, quiet, peaceful, you know, place, it's brilliant. But then, as you said, as soon as you get up and you step out into the real world, you know, within a matter of seconds, it can go out of the window. But again, for me, I suspect that's part of the practice, isn't it? I mean, they say that they're the greatest teachers are the things that come to annoy us and throw us off balance. And I think with meditation, it can help you deal with those things. But you're, you know, absolutely spot on. It sounds easy, but if it was easy, we'd all be enlightened.
Because it's so blissful when you arrive there, even in a small way. It's bliss, isn't it? And the contrast then can be so stark that you're almost sorry, I'll shh.
No, those are very good points. Very good points. Yeah. It kind of leads you to, you know, really think about what exactly practice is, right? You know, is it sat there in the cushion in the morning? Is it, you know, when you're pushed, you know, by your neighbors or your family or people who find it difficult, and then you have to apply some Dharma practice? You know, where is the real practice here? They both work together, right? Right, but one is like the preparation, and one is the actual work that we have to do. So if you've got disturbances, you know, around you, left, right, and center, you've got more chance to practice than being in a monastery all quiet and serene. You've got more places to practice. You've got more chances to become enlightened. You've got more chances to practice patience, loving kindness, you know, counteracting afflictions. If you're in a cave on your own, you know, you might get okay, you know, think you're doing great, There's one story about, this meditator who's meditating away, and he's great, and he's really, profoundly focused on these objects. And then, as soon as he goes into the market to get some food to continue his retreat, he gets upset and gets angry like that. He says, and then someone says, "Oh, so your retreat's going very well then." So unless you've got these opportunities to actually practice, how are you ever going to get better at things that are really important? So you use what you've got, is what I'm trying to say. Those opportunities that you've got, Maggie, are absolutely perfect. You've got everything you need. You don't need anything else. You've got all there.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else want to make any comments there? Should we move to? We've already started a discussion, of course, but maybe it's kind of leading us naturally into it. And I think, let me just look at the slide and I'll just tell you what the discussion points are. I just want us to think about our daily practice, and if you want to share some of your successes and challenges, that's what I'd call it, things that are going well for you in your meditation practice. Here we're talking about meditation practice either in the morning session or then when you're applying some of this really cognitive meditation practices throughout the day. Patience, love and kindness, rejoicing, etc. Or in the morning, whichever you prefer. They're both counting as meditation, right? And then what are the challenges? What are you personally finding? Now, don't just think about the text and recite lists of what the challenges and things are, but what's causing you some difficulty. You don't have to necessarily find solutions. It's just good to share that, where we are right now with our meditation practice. Yeah. So I'm going to leave you alone for 10 minutes to just chat about that. There's no point going to breaking out groups because it's only 5 of us. I'm not sure about Tara Sangmo. I haven't seen her before, so I think maybe he or she hasn't got capability to have audio. So we'll just keep her in the loop. Okay. So I'll leave you to it then. I'll stop the recording. So welcome back after the discussions. Does anybody want to feedback, any comments or anything they want to say about the successes and challenges of your meditation practice?
For me, Selena highlighted a great point, which is that certainly for me, that rigidity of making sure I do my meditation every single day, come what may, and actually the flexibility maybe of, it doesn't have to be a forceful slog to do it. It should be a natural thing, because I think sometimes, certainly for me, that I do the meditation come what may, and I've got to sort of ask myself, am I getting the most out of that by forcing myself to do it at exactly this time, exactly every single day, blah, 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 blah. And Selena, who's been meditating for a few years, sort of explained that you've got to have a bit of flexibility in there as well, which for me is really good advice.
Yeah, it can happen that meditation can become a cause of anxiety if we're not careful. Not meditation itself, but the way you're approaching it. So
well, it's a form of grasping.
Then when it gets to that stage, they always say you have to take a step back and just allow some space from you in the practice and come back with a joyful mind. Otherwise, the longer you kind of slog away at it, the deeper you're kind of resenting it, and then at some point you're just going to separate yourself from it for years and years. It can happen, right? So yeah, we need to take care of these things that are valuable, so we don't end up hating them, which can happen, right? You can't bear to look at the meditation cushion. Just the sight of it makes you sick. We can experience it quite easily. We have to take care of how we treat these sacred things. Yeah. Okay, let me just move on to the last few slides of the this is the meditation for this week. I know we'll see you again after this week, but if you want to look at this last meditation, equanimity, here we're looking at 3 people, a stranger, then a friend, and then what sometimes in the text called an enemy, or just someone, you know, who rubs you up the wrong way, as a difficult person for you. Yeah. So a stranger is somebody who you don't have any particular strong feelings for one way or the other. You don't kind of like or loathe them, you know. I mean, to find somebody completely neutral is very difficult. So, you know, you're talking about an actual individual, a human. But there might be some, so you're, as soon as you meet people, you're making very quick snap judgments on them to some extent. So you just have to kind of go with what's least dramatic in one extreme or the other. And then the friend is obviously somebody who has benefited you in some way, and you're very happy to help. It's very easy for you to help a family or friend member, right? And then the opposite is true of this enemy category, someone who has harmed you in some way or is making life difficult or stops you getting what you want, and you find it very difficult to even be with them, as kind of as a little resistance where you're pushing that person. So those are three kinds of people. You know, just visualize it now. I feel like you won't have time to do the whole meditation. It takes a bit of explaining, but if you visualize those three people in front of you, and you just wish, you know, the stranger, first of all, if you wish them, you know, may you have happiness, may you be free of suffering, for example, those famous phrases, right? It comes very easily to say that to that person, that stranger. And there's kind of no buy-in in that. There's no bias, right, with the stranger. You know, you're not kind of strongly attached, so you're wishing them over exaggerating it, or you're not finding it difficult with a stranger because, you know, they haven't done anything to harm you. So it's kind of flows a bit naturally, that. Yeah. So you want to connect with that evenness, that how easy it is to wish this person well, your affection and care for that person. So that's the base, and you kind of the baseline, and you kind of program that in to your mind. Then you move in front of you now, then you skip, you kind of swipe right and you swipe in front of you, then the person, the friend. And heal, you notice if you say the same thoughts or wish the person well, it's very easy and you're very keen to do it and you really, really genuinely wish them well. And that's probably coming from because they've really supported you in some way. You kind of made a strong connection with them. They've done something really nice for you and you're quite attached, perhaps. You know. And then if you swipe right again, this time the person in front of you is the enemy and you wish the same thoughts. May you be happy, may you be free of suffering. And now you'll notice is a little resistance, a little pushback like that, you know, magnetic poles kind of, it's not so easy to wish that person the same as it was the friend. Do you feel that as you're kind of wishing it for this difficult person? You're kind of saying it and you're thinking, I have to be all nice and Buddhist and holy because I'm thinking about all sentient beings, but there's something in there that kind of, you know, Okay, so then just, you know, stop the visualization just for a moment then. So that is, you know, the basis of trying to develop an even-minded sense of care for all living beings, which is the basis of all the bodhicitta, all the care for love and compassion for all living beings. If we have biases towards people who are attached to, or biases, you know, in the sense that we don't want to help people because they've hurt us in some way, then that's going to go against working for all living beings. Does that make sense? So the very basis, the texts say the base of developing compassion and love and bodhicitta is we have to understand that everybody has an equal right to happiness. They all have an equal right to avoid suffering. It's not that we're trying to, you know, stop affection for people. It's just we're trying to stop the biases that we have towards those individuals. So we'll only help our friends and family, but we'll tend to forget the strangers or the enemies. We might even do something, you know, subconsciously to harm the enemy some way, you know. So the mind's very tricky. Afflictions are very tricky. So I would recommend doing a bit of that work on that one if you're up for this meditation on equanimity. It's a really important one. And you can also do extra analysis on top of that, which is, to think how arbitrary these categories of friends and enemies are actually, because the friends can very quickly become enemies. The enemies, if they do something nice for us over a long period of time, can then become friends, And the text would even go so far as to say, in past lives, these sentient beings, have been my enemies countless times. We've been at each other's throats, for eons and eons. So on what basis am I now describing you as a friend just for something very trivial in this life that you've done for me? But in the past, you've been my enemy. So to call you that now is a bit, it's unsuitable really, because we've been through, samsaric lives together. So we should just kind of put that aside now and just think, you're a person, you deserve happiness just like just like everyone else does. So those bases in which we kind of attach ourselves and push away are very arbitrary, So it's worth investigating that one, right? These are great scope meditation. It's leading us into the brave minds of the Bodhisattvas, which is great scope. So we're not quite there yet, but these are really important foundation steps for that. So thank you, Maggie, for keep mentioning that, because I'd forgotten about that one, and that was a really important one. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll put these slides onto Slack tonight as well. So I'll put the whole 6 weeks onto Slack so that you can see what we've covered in this module. I'll also put the links to the DB reading and the link to the YouTube video.
Thank you.
And just before we do our end of our dedications to the end of this module, if those people who want to do the completion card could just hang on to the call, and we'll just arrange what we're going to do for next week. Yeah, so there we are. That is the end of how to meditate. I don't know why I put that slide in there. Here's a quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The inner peace of an alert and calm mind are the source of real happiness and good health. Real happiness. That's what we're trying to get to here, after all. As Venerable Rene mentioned, not relying on these temporary pleasures, which are like boiling hot water. Those are very temporary. They might give us a quick buzz, but like the junk food, it seems good, but then it's actually in the end, it's not healthy for us.
Kerry, can I don't know about anybody else, but I want to say thank you to everybody for the past 6 weeks. It's been really good.
Good.
And to you, of course. Well, thank you.
Yeah, this is a really nice group I think we have here. It's a really special feeling, and especially during these times of lockdown, it's really really worked well together during this year, actually, because some of you were here when we did the emptiness module, then we did transforming problems, and that was the end of the last series. And now we've done these two, mind its potential and how to meditate. So yeah, it's been amazing 2020 for our study together. And one of the things we should strongly do at the end of things like this is rejoice, because rejoicing creates a lot of merit. One of those 7 limbs I mentioned earlier was to rejoice, rejoicing all the amazing things that we've done together, all the virtue we've created. You can rejoice in all the positive merit that your other classmates here and we've all created together. So then it's multiplied. You get extra merit from those people. And if you rejoice in, all the positive virtue around the world that everyone's doing, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and then wherever all those beings are around the universe of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, hearers, thought realizers, ordinary beings, all those actions that they do, if you're rejoicing all those actions, you get some of their merit too. So it's a really easy, Lama Zopa says, it's such an easy way to create positive karma. This genuine kind of feeling of, wow, how amazing, how wonderful all these great things people do. Yeah. So I strongly hold that feeling as our dedication. And we're going to dedicate all this positive karma that we created for the benefit of all living beings. And we're going to give it all to all living beings until they reach full enlightenment. May it become causes for our own liberation and full enlightenment, however long it takes, so we can be of best benefit for others. Because it's for all the vaccines to work quickly and easily, so that people can, feel a bit less anxious and worried about the whole pandemic that's happened this year. May that happen quickly and easily. May all suffering, wherever it exists, be completely eliminated. May all the kind of centers of FPMT around the world flourish. May there be no obstacles to helping beings understand themselves and become fully enlightened. May there be no obstacles to any of our teachers' health and long life, especially Lama Zopa Rinpoche and His Holiness Dalai Lama, and any of our own teachers. And let's recite this verse together as our dedication. Jancho Sencho Rinpoche Ma Ke Panang Ke Gyuji Ke Wanyam Pa Me Pa Yang Gone Gone Du Pe Wa Sho. Thank you so much, everybody. Well, we'll see you next year if you're interested to continue DB, which we'll be looking at presenting the past. So that's going to be 6 weeks on the entire Lam Rim, just getting it sorted into categories and what the significance of those psychological steps to enlightenment are. And that lays out then the rest of the DB modules, which are going to kind of go into those topics in detail, like Bodhi to emptiness, precision, rebirth, death and impermanence, etc. So maybe you'll join us for those in January. Who knows? Have a fantastic Christmas and New Year. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you shortly, hopefully. Nice to have seen you all. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kerry. Thanks, everyone.